They say secrets give others power. My boss thought he owned me when he found mine. But what he didn't know was that I wasn't the kind of man who bowed forever. I never liked my boss, and the feeling was mutual. He was the kind of man who walked into a room like he owned the air we breathed, arrogant, smug, and cruel with words. He loved humiliating people, especially me. Maybe it was because I wasn't a yes-man type. I questioned him, argued back, and refused to polish his ego like everyone else did. Still, I did my work well. Too well, in fact. My performance made me hard to fire, and that made him hate me even more. But everything changed the day he discovered my secret. It wasn't some crime or scandal. It was something personal, something I never wanted anyone in the office to know. And when he cornered me in his glass office one late evening, he had that smirk on his face that told me he was about to enjoy this. "You know," he said, leaning back in his leather chair, "I've recently learned something interesting about you." I froze. The way he said it, calm and cold, made my stomach twist. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Imagine what people would think if they knew this little detail about your past." I clenched my jaw. "What do you want?" His grin widened. "Good. Straight to the point. I want obedience. I'm tired of your smart mouth and your attitude. From now on, you'll do what I say. No questions. No resistance." Or, he let the silence hang in the air like a noose. I hated myself for asking it, but I whispered, "Or what?" "Or I make sure everyone knows. And trust me, once it's out, you'll never recover." I wanted to punch him, to throw his smug face against the glass walls until the arrogance drained from his eyes. But I didn't. Not that night. That night, I left his office with my fists clenched and my pride burning. From then on, the blackmail began. At first, it was small things. Fetch his coffee. Stay late to redo his reports. Cover up his mistakes. Things an intern should do. Not me. He wanted me humiliated. And every time, he'd give me that knowing smile. That silent reminder that he owned me. But I wasn't built to be owned. Inside, I was already planning. Already thinking. Already sharpening the blade of revenge. Still, the first weeks were brutal. I remember one night, when I was the last one in the office, typing up a presentation. He was too lazy to prepare. My reflection on the computer screen looked back at me. Tired eyes, clenched jaw, the look of a man being broken. But deep down, I whispered to myself, "Not forever. Just wait." The turning point came when he crossed the line. One morning, during a staff meeting, he asked me to stand up. I thought he was going to criticize my work in front of everyone, which was his usual routine. But instead, he leaned back, smirked, and said, "You know, some people here aren't as clean as they look. Some people have secrets, don't they?" His eyes locked on me. My stomach dropped. The room went silent. No one else knew what he was talking about, but the way he dragged the word secrets made my skin crawl. I forced a smile and sat back down, pretending it didn't bother me. But inside, I was boiling. That was the day I decided. Enough was enough. I couldn't just endure his blackmail. I had to flip the game. So I started watching him more closely. His patterns, his habits, the people he called late at night, the strange documents he kept locked in his drawer, the nervous way he checked his phone during meetings. I noticed things no one else paid attention to. And slowly, a picture began to form. A picture of a man who wasn't nearly as clean as he wanted everyone to believe. He thought he owned me, but he didn't realize he had just given me the motivation I needed. The seed of revenge had been planted, and it was growing fast. He stepped up his game. The blackmail turned sharper. At first it was tasks. Then it became tricks. Then it turned cruel. One morning, he slid a list across my desk. "Do these by 5, he said. His voice was flat, cold, and don't make mistakes. The list had things no one should ask an employee to do. Rewrite numbers, hide memos, delete emails, little crimes that would look like mistakes if anyone checked. He smiled like he was teaching me a lesson. I hated him more that day, not just for what he made me do, for what he wanted to do to my life. I obeyed. For a while, I did what he said in public. I did the night work. I stayed late and pretended to be the broken man he wanted me to be. But at night, I worked on what mattered. I watched him. I listened. I learned. The office had cameras in the halls. He always checked them before he met someone. He thought the cameras watched me. They did, but I learned their blind spots. I took notes. I wrote down times. I wrote names. I started small. I opened a locked drawer while he was in a meeting. I didn't touch anything. I only looked. Paper, receipts, a list of names, a string of handwritten codes. Nothing that screamed crime at first glance, but the pattern felt wrong. Then I found a phone. A cheap, tucked-away phone hidden behind a file box. It was old and dusty. No lock. Messages. Short notes about dates. About transfers. About meetings at a coffee shop far from the office. Little things like Friday, 9 p.m., bring the folder. He wrote like he was careful. But he also wrote like he was proud. I didn't take the phone. I took a picture of the screen with my own phone. One quick click. No trace. I began to follow a trail. Not in the creepy, stalking way people imagine. I used common sense. I asked casual questions to coworkers. I listened to gossip. I paid attention to who he called and when. The names repeated. A lawyer, a cleaner, a driver, a middleman I had never met. I made friends where it mattered. I smiled at the IT guy who fixed our printers. I bought coffee for the receptionist. I learned small favors by quiet help. People talk when they're relaxed. People forget who they talk to. You seem like you're under a storm, the IT guy said one afternoon over a cigarette break. He was a quiet man. He knew servers and passwords. He liked to fix things that were broken. You have no idea, I said, and left it at that. But one night he slipped. He told me about a file that kept getting moved on the company server. He said it was odd. No one should touch that folder, he said. But someone keeps shifting it. Maybe an automatic backup. Maybe someone cleaning up. My ears opened. I asked questions. He shrugged. I can look if you want. But I need admin rights. I did not ask for admin rights. I did not tell him why. I only said, be careful. He nodded. He liked to be useful. So, did I. Meanwhile, the boss grew bolder. He wanted more. He started asking me to check on one of his side projects, a client consultation that he could not attend. He wanted me to sit in, take notes, and sign forms if needed. That meant I had access. That meant I could see more. I went to the meeting. It was in a small room in a building that smelled of new paint and cheap coffee. 3 men sat around the table. 2 clean suits. 1 tired old man who seemed to do what he was told. They spoke in code at first. Numbers, percentages, risk buffers. Then they slid a folder toward me. A small, thin file with printouts. I pretended to look. I pretended to be bored. I pretended to be the obedient staffer. Inside were contracts, names of shell companies, references to payments that made no sense. One page had a scanned receipt for a cash transfer to an account in a city I had never heard of. Another had a note, handled discreetly, no trace to HQ. My heart beat fast. This was dirt, real dirt, not just my boss's small cruelties, big transactions, hidden deals. I left with the folder scanned into my head. I walked out like nothing had happened. I smiled at the elevator mirror and told myself not to look weak. Back at my desk, I opened my laptop. I created a secure note, locked it with a password only I knew. I copied the names and the numbers. I wrote times and dates. I saved a photo of the boss's cheap phone. I kept everything in one place. I realized I needed proof that could not be denied. Words and hearsay would not be enough. I needed documents. I needed a trace. I needed something that linked the boss to those payments and the blackmail. One night, I found a way in. The receptionist always left her keys on the counter when she took breaks. Her purse was open. Inside was a token card for the building archive. She used it to pull old files for people who asked. She said it was no big deal. She trusted people. That trust fed me. I used the token card once. I went down to the archive after hours. The lights hummed. The air smelled like dust and paper. Files stacked to the ceiling made tiny canyons of knowledge. I searched. I read old expense reports. I checked invoices. I compared dates. Slowly a map formed. Little entries here. A coded payment there. A checkbox that said consulting fee, but linked to the same shell company name I saw in the folder. My hand shook when I lifted a page that had the boss's signature in blue ink. The same signature that laughed at me in his office. The same signature on a payment approval to a company that existed only on paper. The proof was not perfect, but it was close. I knew I could get evidence that could not be ignored. I only needed one more thing. One final link. As I walked out of the archive, a light clicked on somewhere behind a stack of boxes. I froze. A voice whispered, "You shouldn't be here." I turned. The voice was low, calm, familiar. He stood in the narrow aisle. His face was a mask half in shadow. He smiled like he always did when he had a plan. "How long have you been looking?" he asked. My chest tightened. For a moment, I forgot to breathe. The man I hated stood 10 feet away, holding a clipboard like he had every right to be there. "You're in the wrong place," he said softly. "This isn't a history class, kid." I felt the weight of the files in my bag. I felt the phone in my pocket. I felt the plan inside my head. The trap I was building. He took one step toward me. Then he laughed. A short, sharp sound. "You think you can dig my graves and not get dirt on your hands?" I met his eyes. I thought of the mornings he had humiliated me. The nights he sent me home tired and small. The list. The folder. The phone. I could lie. I could play scared. But I did not. "I'm not digging graves," I said. "I'm just cleaning the house." He smiled wider, and for the first time I saw something else in that smile. Not just arrogance. Pride. Pride that he had power. Pride that he was untouchable. He stepped closer. He picked up a file from the shelf behind him and ran his finger along the spine. "Careful," he said. "Some things are better left closed." I kept my voice steady. "Maybe, or maybe the best things are the ones people hide." He stopped smiling then. For a heartbeat, the office was a different place. Sharp, dangerous. He said nothing more. He turned and walked away, the clip of his shoes echoing down the aisle. But he paused at the door. He looked back once. His eyes found mine. "Don't get clever," he said. I watched him leave. My stomach ached. My plan felt close. Terrifyingly close. I walked out too, but my steps were slow. I felt the world tilt. I had what I needed to move forward. But he had seen me in the archive. He had looked into my eyes and warned me. He was on to something. Or he wanted me to think he was. Either way, the game had changed. After that night in the archive, I couldn't shake his words. "Don't get clever." They echoed in my head while I worked, while I slept, while I ate. It wasn't just a warning. It was a threat, but I wasn't scared anymore. No, that night, when he caught me with the files, something shifted. I realized he suspected me, which meant I had nothing left to lose. So I doubled down. By day, I was the same obedient servant he thought he had broken. I fetched his coffee. I typed his reports. I stood in meetings while he mocked me. I even smiled sometimes just to feed his ego. But by night, I became something else. A hunter. I spent hours going through the photos I had taken, the phone messages, the files from the archive, the contracts, the payments. Piece by piece, the puzzle was forming. It was bigger than I thought. He wasn't just a bully boss. He was running money through ghost companies, covering up shady deals, and funneling it under fake projects. And the worst part? He used employees like me to sign off the paperwork. So if anything ever went wrong, he'd be safe. We burned, not him. That made me furious. Furious enough to risk everything. I started recording. My phone became my weapon. Every time he spoke to me in that low, threatening voice, I left it running in my pocket. Every cruel laugh, every do this or else, every mocking line, I captured it all. But words alone weren't enough. I needed something undeniable. Paper trails, numbers, signatures. That's when I used the IT guy, not directly. I was careful. I'd ask harmless questions about backups, about old email logs, about how deleted files never really disappear. He liked explaining things. He liked showing off. And when he wasn't looking, I paid attention to the admin passwords he typed in. Late one night, I logged in. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. But the server opened like a locked door, finally giving way. Emails. So many emails. Some between him and lawyers. Some between him and unknown addresses. The words were vague, but the attachments weren't. Spreadsheets, payment lists, transaction histories, all pointing to the same shell companies I'd seen in the archive, and every one of them had his initials on it. I copied everything. I encrypted it. I saved on a hidden drive, tucked away where even I couldn't reach it without effort. It was evidence, heavy evidence, enough to bury him. Still, something inside me whispered, it's not enough. You need him caught in the act. You need the kill shot. So I set the trap. One morning, I walked into his office with a smile. I need to talk, I said. He looked up suspicious. About what? About being useful, I said. I want to help you. Really help you. His eyes narrowed, but greed made him lean forward. Go on. I know I've been difficult, but I get it now. You hold the cards. Maybe if I prove my loyalty, we can work together. It was a lie, but I sold it with a shaky voice, the kind of voice he loved hearing from people beneath him. He smirked. Finally learning your place, huh? I nodded. Tell me what you need, and I'll make it happen. That was the moment he swallowed the bait. He started giving me bigger tasks. Handling files. Sitting in on calls. Carrying sealed envelopes to men I didn't know. Every time I did it, I smiled. I pretended to be loyal. But behind that smile, I was recording. I was tracking. I was building the final web. The more he trusted me, the more reckless he became. He bragged. He boasted. One night, while half drunk after company dinner, he leaned close to me and whispered, you know, if this all works out, I'll be untouchable. Nobody can touch me. Nobody. He laughed. I laughed with him. But my phone was already running in my pocket. Still, I knew none of this would matter if I didn't find the right stage, the perfect moment where the world would see him for what he was. I didn't want a private takedown. I wanted humiliation. I wanted his mask ripped off in front of everyone he had ever controlled. That's when the idea came. The quarterly company presentation. Every 3 months, the entire firm gathered in the big hall. Executives, managers, staff, everyone. The boss loved those meetings. He loved standing on stage, talking about profits, acting like a king. What better place to end him? But I needed the trigger. Something that would flip the show on its head. Something undeniable. I found it in the IT system. The presentations were uploaded to the main server before the meeting. Anyone with the right access could add slides without being noticed. It was risky, but I had the passwords now. So I built my own slide. A hidden one. It wasn't just a slide, it was a bomb. Screenshots of the emails, the payments, the contracts, even audio clips of him blackmailing me, tied neatly to his face and name. I placed it at the end of his presentation, tucked away, waiting. And then I waited. The night before the meeting, I barely slept. My mind replayed every step. What if it failed? What if he noticed? What if they blamed me? But another thought burned brighter. What if it worked? The morning came. The hall was packed. Everyone sat with notebooks and fake smiles. The boss walked to the stage in his perfect suit, holding his perfect posture, smirking like he owned us all. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, I am proud to share our progress this quarter. The audience clapped. My chest tightened. He clicked to the first slide. Then the next. Profits, growth, charts, all fake, all polished lies. I sat in the second row, my hands sweating, my pulse racing. Slide after slide passed. And then the screen flickered. For a second, I thought it failed. Then the hidden slide flashed up. Emails, payments, audio files, his voice hissing, "Do this or else." The hall went silent, dead silent, gasps, shocked faces, whispers cutting through the air. The boss froze mid-sentence, staring at the screen like it was a gun pointed at his head. I leaned back in my chair. For the first time in months, I smiled. But then he turned. His eyes met mine, and he smiled back, a cold, dangerous smile, like he had expected this all along. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled, every eye locked on a man who once held my life in his hands. The blackmailer walked in with that same arrogant grin, the kind that said he still believed he was untouchable. I sat across from him, calm on the outside but burning inside. This was the moment I had waited for. The judge called order, and his lawyer immediately went on the attack, painting me as unstable, desperate, and vengeful. For a moment, doubt crept in. What if people believed him? What if this backfired? But then the evidence came out. My evidence. The files he had used against me. The messages where he demanded silence. The recordings where his voice was unmistakable. The room shifted. Gasps echoed. The blackmailer's smirk faltered. His hands twitched nervously. Still, his lawyer fought back, twisting words, bending facts. And that's when the witness stepped forward, one of his past victims. Their story mirrored mine, a chilling repetition of his cruelty. One by one, more people spoke. Each testimony was another nail in his coffin. The mask he wore shattered before everyone's eyes. No more lies, no more power. He wasn't the hunter anymore. He was prey. When the jury finally declared him guilty, the silence in the courtroom was heavier than thunder. I should have felt nothing but relief. Yet deep down, I wondered, had I truly won, or had I become something darker in the process? The blackmailer was sentenced to years in prison. His empire crumbled overnight. His allies abandoned him, and the same people who once feared him now spat on his name. I should have felt victorious. But instead I felt hollow, like a battle won but at the cost of something I couldn't name. One evening, after the verdict, I sat alone with the box of evidence that had destroyed him. I opened it, staring at the same files he once used to control me. That's when the truth hit me. These files didn't just belong to him. Inside were secrets about powerful people, all of them guilty of something. He had collected dirt on everyone. And now, that dirt was in my hands. For a long time, I thought about burning it, ending the cycle. But as my fingers brushed over those names, a darker thought whispered, why waste it? He used these files for greed and cruelty. What if I used them for justice? So I made my choice. I didn't destroy the files. I used them. Quietly, carefully. One by one, I pulled strings, exposed corruption, toppled people who thought they were untouchable. The blackmailer's tools had become mine, and in a twisted way, I had become what I once despised. But here's the thing, I didn't feel guilty. Not anymore. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't the one being hunted. I was the one pulling the strings. If I were in this situation, here's what I would have done. I would have burned those files, walked away, and rebuilt my life with clean hands. Revenge feels powerful, but it has a way of chaining you to the very darkness you tried to escape. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.